Good morning. Welcome to the regular council meeting for the Corporation of the Township of Minden Hills for Thursday, August 13th, 2026. In review of today's agenda, there is a report delegation from Dennis Penny related to the Water Street Dock Engineering Report and a delegation from Jennifer Hicks requesting community safety zone on Blairhampton Road. Also, there is a closed session scheduled towards the end of the meeting. I'll now read the roll call to confirm attendance. Councillor Sisson.
Present.
Councillor Saini.
Present.
Councillor McKelvey.
Present.
Councillor Johannesson.
Present.
Councillor Ingram.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Shell.
Present.
Mayor Carter. Present. All right. So we respectfully acknowledge that the Township of Minden Hills is located on Treaty 20 Michisagi territory and in the traditional territory of the Michisagi and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations, which are Curve Lake, Rama, Hiawatha, Alderville, Scugog Island, Beausoleil, and Georgina Island First Nations. We acknowledge the shared presence of Indigenous nations throughout the area and recognize its original Indigenous inhabitants as stewards of its lands and waters since time immemorial. I call this meeting to order at 9:01 a.m. And be it resolved that August 13th regular council meeting agenda be approved as circulated, moved by Councillor Johannesson, seconded by Councillor Saini. All those in favor? Do the check marks. Okay, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we move directly into the delegations. Mr. Penny, if you'll please join us at the delegation table. If you could just both identify yourselves and with your address for the record, and then please start when you're ready.
Good morning, everyone. Dennis Penny from 8 Water Street.
Jim Applestone, Gully, friend of the town.
When you're ready.
So the reason we're here today is we'd like to ask if we could postpone this report about the engineering for the Jim Ecclestone's been working very hard on coming up with a plan, which I've jumped in to help him. We're still doing some research and digging into some stuff. We wanted to present it in September because a lot of the people we're trying to get on board with this are busy this time of year. As far as the dock goes, back a while, I'll let Jim explain.
Yeah, I think going back, Mr. Mayor, some time ago, I made a presentation in reference to the dock that I had the contractors look at it. And their opinion at the time was it's very fixable. It's needs new boards and the structure is sound. And my plan at that day was that I would do it free of charge for the town. I'd had volunteers all lined up to fix the dock and put it in play. I think at the time, the town wasn't sure who actually owned the dock. This goes back in the spring, and I think since then you've had a chance to look into that. And past that, I've just been busy in town, so I hadn't had a chance to relook at it again. But I have had contractors look at it and say there's nothing wrong with the structure of it. And all we have to do in areas is put new boards on where the plywood is, where the present boards are, you power wash it, you clean it up. And very little money, that dock can be back in play again. That's my opinion and opinion of one of my general contractors that I've been using in town. Just to give you that information.
It would at least give us time that it could be usable now and throughout next year until another plan comes in place for down there. There's many service clubs that have been talking about beautification of the riverfront that have been working hard towards planning and getting ready to present to you. So yeah, that's basically what we have to say. Other than Jim has a really nice mock-up of kind of one of the ideas that we have. I will put it over at the shop on a table. If anybody wants to come walk through, you're more than welcome to have a look at some of the ideas that he has. Thank you.
Any questions by council? Seeing none, the report will certainly go to staff and they can review what you're putting forward and we can go from there. Is there? Okay, thank you very much. Now, Jennifer Hicks. And just please identify yourself, give us your address for the record, and then start when you're ready.
Jennifer Hicks. My address is 1130 Blairhampton Road in Minden. I have prepared a petition, and I was able to collect 69 signatures on my petition. The petition read, "We, the undersigned residents, property owners, and concerned citizens, respectfully request that the Township of Minden Hills designate the final 1 kilometer section of Blairhampton Road, where it meets Highway 35, as a 40-kilometer-an-hour community safety zone. This section of Blairhampton Road has evolved into a busy residential corridor that is no longer adequately protected by its current road designation. Traffic volumes have increased substantially as more motorists use Blairhampton Road as an alternate route to and from Halliburton. In addition to local residents, the roadway experiences significant year-round cottage and recreational traffic, as well as vehicles traveling to the Blairhampton Golf Club and nearby lakes and recreational properties. The combination of residential, recreational, and through traffic has fundamentally changed the character of this roadway. This area presents several serious safety concerns. Over 20 children and youth live along this 1 kilometer stretch, many of whom walk, ride bicycles, play outdoors, and wait for school. Residents regularly walk their dogs, walk with their families, and use Blairhampton Road to access the 12-mile Lake Beach that's off of Chambers Road, resulting in frequent pedestrian activity, particularly during the summer months. The roadway serves as an important access route to Blairhampton Golf Club, which increases vehicle volumes throughout the golf season. The roadway contains multiple blind corners and limited sight lines, reducing drivers' ability to see pedestrians, cyclists, wildlife, pets, and oncoming traffic. Numerous blind driveways make it difficult and hazardous for residents to safely enter and exit their properties. Family, pets, and wildlife frequently are on roadways, creating additional risks. And the increase through traffic has resulted in concerns about excessive speed and unsafe driving behavior within what is fundamentally a residential neighborhood. A significant concern is that there is currently no posted speed limit on the Blairhampton Road. Without clearly posted speed limit signage, residents have found it difficult to address speeding concerns, and enforcement by police is considerably more challenging. A clearly posted 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit combined with a community safety zone designation would provide motorists with an unmistakable expectation while enabling more effective enforcement. Under Ontario's community safety zone legislation, higher fines for speeding offenses reinforce the importance of driver compliance and encourage motorists to reduce speed in areas where children, pedestrians, cyclists, and other vulnerable road users are present. We believe this designation would significantly improve safety for everyone who lives on, visits, or travels along the Blairhampton Road. Our community is asking the township to take proactive action before a preventable tragedy occurs. So we respectfully request that the Township of Minden Hills designate the final 1 kilometer section of Blairhampton Road adjacent to Highway 35 as a community safety zone, establish and post 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limits through this section of the roadway, install community safety zone signage in accordance with Ontario legislations so that increased penalties associated with speeding in a community safety zone would apply. And if necessary, conduct a traffic volume and speed study and consider additional traffic calming measures. Furthermore, so Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak this morning about a very straightforward request that the final 1 kilometer of Blairhampton Road between Blairhampton Road neighborhood and Highway 35 be designated as a 40-kilometer-an-hour community safety zone. I am here to represent 69 people who have signed this petition and many more who I'm sure are in agreement. I want to make an important point about these signatures. They aren't all simply people who live on this stretch of road. I have signatures from residents, but also cottagers and other people who heard about this issue and wanted to support it. We have local residents who were genuinely shocked to learn that there is currently no marked speed limit on Blairhampton Road. These are people who understand that a community safety zone doesn't necessarily benefit them, but they are asking for something that directly impacts the daily lives of people who do. They support it because they recognize that people should be able to safely live, walk, and travel in their community. This is a family safety issue. There are currently 21 children living on this 1 kilometer stretch of road. Children are required to walk this route to get to the bus stop at the intersection of Highway 35 and Blairhampton Road for both high school and elementary school pickups. This creates an issue of equity because the people who can afford to safely drive their children to the bus stop have a safe route to school. Families that don't own cars do not have safe way to get their children to school. Families walk their dogs, families walk, they cycle. We have the 12-mile public beach within walking distance of our neighborhood. We should be able to walk, cycle, or otherwise get to our neighborhood beach with our children without feeling that we're taking our lives into our hands. That may sound dramatic, but that is what it feels like to walk down the shoulder of our road. For example, when my husband and I walk down the road, we go back and forth, we block my daughter from the road, and we are constantly vigilant and shouting like, car, car, and it seems unreasonable to continue this. If we say that we want young families to move to Minden Hills, then we need to start creating neighborhoods that actually feel safe for families. Family-focused infrastructure doesn't always mean huge projects or expensive construction. The cost of this is relatively low, signage, and that's it. Sometimes it means something as simple as a properly posted speed limit, a community safety zone where children and families are actually using the road. There are no shoulders. There are multiple blind corners. Some of the corners are on hills. There are blind driveways. There are children, pedestrians, cyclists, pets, and in Haliburton County, wildlife. And the majority of traffic is traveling far too quickly for these conditions. There is also a very noticeable change in how people drive along this section. After coming through the twisty, turny back road section of Blairhampton, many drivers reach that final kilometer and seem to treat it as a speedway to Highway 35. This is exactly what drivers are doing. They speed up, they don't slow down, and that's what we need them to do. The problem exists year-round. Yes, it is a worse problem in the summer. However, we have year-round cottage and recreational traffic all year round. In the winter, the situation becomes more of an issue where snowbanks are high, the usable portion of the road becomes narrower, visibility is reduced, and this road is also part of a snowmobile trail system. So we have a combination of vehicles, pedestrians, children, and snowmobiles using the same corridor, often with significantly reduced sightlines and road width. The community has already tried to make a difference. Our neighborhood has actually taken steps ourselves. Residents have privately purchased and posted slow down children, slow down pets, drive with caution signs in an effort to make people aware. We've tried to make a difference, but the signs aren't enough. They are a grassroots attempt to compensate for the fact that there is no clearly posted speed limit and no formal designation recognizing the safety needs of this area. A community safety zone is the change that could actually make a meaningful difference. It provides a clear official message to drivers. It establishes a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit. And it provides police with an enforceable posted speed limit where currently there isn't one. This is not an unreasonable request. We aren't asking you to close the road. We aren't asking for a major road reconstruction project. We aren't asking to prevent people from using the Blairhampton Road. We are simply asking for a 40-kilometer-an-hour speed limit and community safety zone on that final 1 kilometer stretch of the road where 21 children live and where pedestrians, families, pets, recreational users, and motorists all share the roadway. The township already recognizes the value of community safety zones in other locations, including Inglesby and areas near the school and in town. The concept is not new. The question is whether this particular stretch of road has demonstrated a legitimate safety need, and I believe the answer is clearly yes. We are asking for proactive action, not a response after something happens. I want to make this one final point very clearly. We are bringing this issue to council before someone is seriously injured or killed on our roadway. We are giving the township an opportunity to look at conditions, listen to people who use the road daily, and take a reasonable preventative step. I am not asking you to predict the future. I am just asking you to look at the conditions that exist today and act before we have to explain why we didn't. So this morning, on behalf of the petitioners, I am asking council to designate this final 1 kilometer stretch of the Blairhampton Road adjacent to Highway 35 as a community safety zone. And that's all.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Deputy Mayor Shell?
Thank you for the delegation, Jennifer. Just, I guess the question is kind of to staff because I see the recommendation is just to receive the delegation, but I'm just wondering if we could add something that that staff would, look into. It wouldn't just be an acceptance, that we would actually investigate these.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Right, through you, Mr. Mayor, my intention would be to get a copy of the delegates' information, and our Director of Public Works isn't here today, but certainly follow up and bring back information to council.
Councilor McKelvey?
Thank you very much, Jennifer. Well done. We, at our last meeting on July the 23rd, authorized staff to do a road need study, a speed limit review, and a traffic speed study to a consultant. So I'm pretty sure that all the roads are going to have this kind of an analysis done. It takes time, obviously. There's I don't know the criteria in the act as far as doing a designated community safety zone. I do know that the one in Inglesby is on a county road. The one here, of course, was the school. So I think that staff will be able to obtain some information on this. The other thing is that when we do any reduced speed limits, we need to make sure it gets passed on to the maps or whatever. Like right now, if you come into town here, it's still showing, I think on my car, a lot higher speed than the 40. So whatever we do down the road with any of these, we need to make sure that Google Maps or whoever it is gets that information as well.
Go ahead.
I can speak to the legislation. I did look into it, and it has to do with the number of children in the roadway, which 21 does meet the threshold. It also refers to like location to a neighborhood park or community center, which I would consider that the the public beach on Chambers Road might address that.
Okay, so as you know, there is a process to go through, so staff will take your information. And, we only learn of these things when people actually tell us about them, and so staff will take a look at it and go through the process of trying to make it happen. Okay, so I think I have and it'll be referred to staff, right? Okay, it was originally moved by Deputy Mayor Shell and seconded by Councillor McKelvey. And so it will read that council receives delegation from Jennifer Hicks requesting a community safety zone on 1 kilometer of the Blair Hampton Road adjacent to Highway 35. This information, and then the council refers the information to staff for further study. Councilor McKelvey?
We asked that it say in report of council.
Sure.
Thanks.
Okay. Reading so much, and I'll read again, that council receives a delegation from Jennifer Hicks requesting a community safety zone on 1 kilometer of Blair Hampton Road adjacent to Highway 35. This information, and that council refers to staff who will report back to council. Those in favor? That is carried. Now we talked about the adoption of minutes from previous meeting, and the adoption of the July 23rd regular meeting minutes. Are there any comments or amendments? Seeing none, moved by signature I don't recognize, Councillor Ingram, and seconded by Councillor Saney. Be it resolved that council approves the July 23rd, 2026 regular meeting minutes. All those in favor? That is carried. In terms of the mayor's report, don't really have to review for council the fact that yesterday was the presentation by Ehorn of their of the study. All of you were there, but for the audience who was not there, I would encourage you to go to the county website, and you can read the full report. Basically, after the report, it was determined by county council to do a deeper dive into some of the financials associated with the report. This process, as you well know, was put together to do the study in this term of council, but to not make a recommendation, and to turn all of the information over to the new councils, who can then decide how to proceed and basically determine the whole process from that point going forward. So that is still the schedule. It's a little bit, difficult for some, in that there's now this almost like hiccup or interruption between the constant flow. And I'm sure for some people who are going to feel that, wow, we did something in August and it's really going to be January before the new council starts taking action or discussing this. And I think the only thing that can be said is that the county has promised that there will be a steady flow of information that is going out to all involved and all stakeholders. So I think that that is really the best we can do, because it will be up to the new councils to decide how to proceed from there on. And that's really all I had to say on that. Councillor Saney, is there anything on the Roma board?
Thank you through the mayor. Our next meeting is this weekend, so I have no updates on some of the initiatives that we're taking on and regret that I won't be here on the weekend.
Okay,
Thank you.
Councillor McKelvey?
Just want to point out Rotary Fest is this weekend. So encourage everybody to come in.
Yeah, I was going to mention that later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I thought it would have been part of your mayor's report, so I'll wait for you to mention it.
Rome board and then correspondence and communication, do I? Okay, we had a consent agenda. No, there was no request to pull any of the corresponding items for discussion. Is there any change of heart on that? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor Sisson and seconded by Councillor McKelvey. Council receives correspondence and communication items 11.1 to 11.5 is information. All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, doing now department reports, quarter. Yeah, I got it here. So we start off with Public Works and Mr. Drinkwalter, I believe that you're stepping in for Mr. Timmons.
So I'm the head of Public Works today.
All right. You're a multi,
Don't ask me any tough questions though.
you're a multi-talented individual, so please, when you're ready, please start.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, we had a truck rollover incident earlier this year. There was no injuries, but the truck was declared a total loss by the insurer. So we've gone through the insurance company and gone back and forth with them, just negotiating the price of it. And the full cost of a new tandem will be with the plow will be reimbursed. I will note, if you go down to financial implications, I do have a calculation error there, but the total price we are getting is $469,687.94, less our deductible of $10,000. So $459,687.94. Sorry, and we are looking at purchasing a new tandem. And we must purchase a new tandem before we get the check from the insurance company.
Okay, so what are we receiving from the insurance company then?
So $469,687.94, less our deductible of $10,000.
Any questions? Councillor Sisson.
When would this show up in the yard, Doc?
That is a good question. I know they have it in stock. So it's just a matter of getting this report passed, letting Winslow's know, and getting the tank, likely getting it outfitted and getting it.
Any other questions? Seeing none. Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Sisson. Council receives report 26-23 RDS replacement tandem trucking as information. And that council directs staff to purchase a new tandem truck from Winslow Girolami Motors for $459,687.94 plus HST to be reimbursed by the township's insurer. All those in favor? That is carried. And now I believe you'll switch hats and
Yep.
put on your sneakers and
These are all related to finance, so.
and talk about community service.
So through the chair, in the budget this year, we had an emergency backup generator budgeted for $300,000 for the SG Nesbitt Memorial Arena. We put out an RFP stating our criteria for the generator and what was required. We received 2 eligible bids, both from Del Sharp Electric Limited. Both were under the budgeted amount. And we scored the bids. We're recommending going with Dell Sharp Electric, which received a score of 89, for the total price of $226,141.76.
Questions, Deputy Mayor Shell?
This is maybe a really stupid question, but why is that the same person bid for the same thing but had different scores and different price point?
Yep.
Is there?
No, that's a
answer?
that's a good question. So under our procurement policy, the same vendor can make multiple bids. With this specific example, there was two different products. And the reason for the lower score was mostly, it was the price, because they were identical bids.
Councilor McKelvey?
There was another company that bid.
Yes, we did receive more bids, but they weren't eligible under our procurement policy, once we did our review.
Okay, any other questions? None, moved by Councillor Saini, seconded by Councillor Johansson. The council receives report 26-14, Community Services Department Emergency Backup Generator, SG Nesbitt Memorial Arena RFP award as information, and the council directs staff to award RFP number CSD 26-01, Emergency Backup Generator, SG Nesbitt Memorial Arena, to Dell Sharp Electric Limited for $226,141.76 plus HST. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. And continuing on,
Yes, through the chair. This report, so under our new procurement policy, any projects we expect to be between $50,000 and $100,000, we're required to get 3 written quotes. So that's what we proceeded to do with the Water Street Dock engineering. We did receive multiple quotes that were between that range. However, they were over our budgeted amount. So for the Water Street Dock engineering, we budgeted $30,000 for engineering services. The quotes came in between 45 and 75,000. We're still reviewing the quotes, but we've as part of our procurement policy, we need to come to council to ask for additional funds to cover the cost. So as part of that, the Riverwalk lighting project, which was originally budgeted for $50,000, the cost to complete came in around 20,000. And when I say around 20,000, we haven't got a invoice yet. So I checked before the meeting. We just haven't. It hasn't come into our GL yet. So we're looking to move 30,000 of that budget towards the Water Street Dock engineering to cover off the cost.
questions, Councillor Sissa?
We just had a delegation here this morning about a dock. I'm not in favor of doing this at all because 9 times out of 10, if you ask a dock person, they will supply their own engineer to build a dock. And that's included in their price. So I don't see why we're engineering it when somebody else is going to be building it that would supply an engineer. And also these 2 gentlemen asked if it be put on hold. Mr. Ecclestone has already offered to supply an engineer at no cost in the township. So I think I need to postpone this for now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Ecclestone offered a contractor's review of my understanding is a portion of the dock. There is quite a big portion of this structure that is underwater and that is attached, I believe, to a retaining wall. The reason that we want to do an engineered study is to make sure that the substructure is sound. This is a public dock that my understanding is the township inherited years ago. And I don't know that there wasn't a study done at that point. But we're happy to work with the group that did a delegation, but it would be our strong recommendation that before we go and just put boards on the top, we understand how this structure functions.
Councilman Kelby?
I have a couple questions. I want, first of all, I would like to defer this until we allow the locals group that has been working on this an opportunity. But having said that, if we go ahead, I have some questions on the financing options here because the money in the budget for the lights along the river were going to be coming from Parkland Reserve, I believe. So it's not like we are shifting a budget amount to another project. We're still just taking money out of the reserve. And that reserve, I would question whether it has that in it because when we had a report in, I'm not sure what month it was, when we agreed to purchase the property on Mountain Lake, your report indicated that the Parkland Reserve had 58,000 and change in it, and you were recommending we use 50,000 of that towards the cost of the purchase. So I'm not sure we even, I would kind of need to know what we have in that reserve, but at this point, I really want to wait and see what we can do. So, but at the same time, I want people to be able to get out of the river onto this structure. So is there any way that we can put boards down as they're saying right now as a temporary fix to let people out of the river? Because they're coming out of the river anyways. They're, stepping over barricades, which really is more of a liability to me, in my thinking, so.
From staff's perspective, council, we've talked about this a number of times, that we need an engineered study of this dock. And so that's how staff has been proceeding. I cannot sit here and say we can safely operate that dock without having somebody review it.
And I would guess that one of the issues is that it can only really be reviewed at times of lower water.
That is correct. Mr. Mayor, it would have been our intention to have this done as soon as possible. As we had high water in the spring, engineers weren't able to get in there and take a really good look. Thanks.
Mr. Saney?
Thank you. I don't want to delay this. I'd like to approve this allocation because it is such a priority for our community. But I also think this might be an opportunity to do something a little bit out of the box in terms of working with the community to say, hey, we have this, but we have to have an engineered study. Let's work together to get that engineered study done and do this right the first time. So we're not wasting their resources and time and taking our liability lightly. So I think there's a great opportunity here to work together on this. And so allocate the money. Let's not delay it. Let's do it as soon as possible. But knowing that we need an engineered study, my only question in that is that, are we limited in who does that engineering study? We have some local engineers, for example, like who could do this quickly for us and working, or are we limited in terms of what engineers we use? Thank you.
Through you, and I'll let Mr. Drinkwalter, from a procurement standpoint, I think we've already gone out and talked to 3 engineering firms, and I believe they are local. So we've already engaged the engineering firms.
Deputy Mayor Shell.
Thank you. Not so much a question, just a comment. I agree with what Councillor Saney's saying. I mean, unfortunately, we live in this world of liability and it's wonderful that the community wants to help. But I would agree that we actually need to probably have the engineer take a look and then work with the community group to make it happen and to their vision, not just councils.
Councilor Ingram?
The decking on that dock was replaced in 1992 and the substructure was fine then. It's been in the water since the sixties. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. The retaining wall is not attached to it. It was done separately after the fact. I did it myself. Still standing. I don't know how we went from replacing a few doors on the top, like we would a picnic table, for example, when it needs repair, to having to do a full-blown structural analysis on the dock. Well, I don't get it. I don't get it.
Mayor Shell.
Just then through what Councillor Ingram's saying, so what, is it because we've had the 4 floods in the last 13 years that there's a concern that there's been a shift, or no, that's why I'm
Through-
asking. I don't know either.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is a structure like a bridge, like any other engineered structure that should be reviewed on a regular basis.
Councillor Sadie.
Yeah, and this is part of our problem where we haven't kept up with some of our maintenance of our buildings over the years. So this is coming because of that, I think. A few things are going through my mind right now. One of them, I want to move quickly on this. If the engineer can do this quickly, that would be great. And work with the community to get this done sooner than later. I mean, if that's an option at all. If we give the go-ahead, people can, put their paddles in the water and keep going, right? But if we are delaying this, then they can't. The other concern is that if there's an option for a temporary dock of some kind, understand that we have to go through the federal ministries to get approval to put a temporary dock in, but at the same time, people put toxin all the time in front of their properties and water. So I wish there's a way that we could put some kind of ramp to, my theory is 2 posts. I'm not an engineer. Colleagues aren't engineers here, but for 2 posts that go deep in the ground with a raft going out, a slope going out to a raft, we now have something that people could use that is very common that every other cottager and people along the river are using to get in and out of our water quickly and to help our downtown quickly. So I'd like to throw that idea into the mix of what we might be able to do in terms of doing something quickly and for this summer. And, but also want to work closely with the community in getting this done. I understand the reason to do engineered studies. I understand that this, my colleague has done it himself and attached it and knows, and I'm a bit of a person that likes to do things that way as well, but I understand here we need to do that engineered approval to make sure it's safe. So, thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Ingrid was first.
Through you, Mayor. My concern about this now is we allow docks all over the river as well. Do we inspect those on a regular basis? Because the public can use them. They're public docks. I mean, we've never inspected that dock in all the years that I've ever. I just don't get it. I don't get why a hole that was in the dock 3 years ago turned into this. Why didn't they just fix it in the first place instead of blocking off the whole damn thing? And if you're going to block it off and you're going to do this study, and if it's that unsafe, then let's put some proper railings up so people can't use it. People are still using it every day. Every day. I mean, the liability is there whether you like it or not. And as far as getting it done fast, I agree with the mayor. The water goes up and down, up and down. It could be next January. Depends on what. So getting it fast, I don't know if that'll happen quick. I don't disagree with the CAOs having to get. Just I'm wondering how it's done.
Thank you. This has been a topic on everybody's mind lately. This river has been extremely busy this summer, I think, with the heat and whatnot, but we have an event coming up next weekend that is a huge attraction, and I know they're worried about people slipping back into the water because there's not a safe way to get out. I also have been told that there's some people that would be willing to put a temporary dock in just to help us out. Is that something that we can look at? I mean, we still have a little bit of the summer left. Like I said, this is a huge event that draws people in from all areas. And not just for this event, but for everything that's gone on. I mean, we have busloads of camp kids coming, and we all know it's a concern, and I'm not saying that nobody's ignoring it, but it's just unfortunate. I mean, we're in the middle of August now, but we still have some time to play with, I think.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think with council's approval for us to move on, we can look at, are there ways we can do something temporary in the meantime? I think to the question about docks along the river, they're not, maybe the public's using them, but they're not in the township's ownership. So, you know, that's one aspect. I think for staff, we believe it's important to have it reviewed. We will expedite as quickly as possible. And as part of that, we'll look at, is there any temporary solution that we can put in place?
Councillor Sani.
So I would greatly appreciate any temporary solution, and that might be something that we work with the community, as they might be able to take on that temporary situation. And I think that would be excellent. My colleague next to me, not to steal Councillor's thunder here, but he also suggested is the snowmobile bridge an option to use in this situation as well. So, thank you.
Councillor McKelvey.
So right now, we have a report asking us to reallocate funds because they want to go ahead and get an engineer and have that engineer review what's there, provide a scope of work and drawings to move forward with the construction of a new dock. I want that part of this deferred until we've given the people that came to us. And I did mention this at the last meeting, that I asked staff to please talk to Jim Stone about this. He's done a lot of work. So this part of it, I'm not ready to go ahead with, only because this is saying that they want to hire an engineer, do a scope of work and drawings to move forward with putting out a bid for a new dock. And we haven't really given the local initiatives any thought. I'm surprised when we're being told there was 3 local engineers. I didn't think we had 3 local engineers, but like that part of it, I'm not ready to move forward with. I am really concerned about the dock as it sits there right now and the need to have it temporarily fixed. And I'm not talking about the structure underneath. I want to be able to see people get out of the river, because when you're talking liability, it doesn't get much worse than that right now, as far as I'm concerned, where people have got stairs to come up out of the river onto the dock, and it's got caution tape across it. Like, I'm very concerned. Can we direct staff today to, perhaps if you really need an engineer to do that, a local engineer come up and look at it and see if you can just put some more plywood on the top to get us through.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will look at a temporary solution.
Councillor Sani.
Yes, I just want to add that depending on your perspective, this can't be an emergency situation. This is a main thoroughfare for our businesses downtown, with people coming in from Gull Lake to shop, to be taking part in some of our restaurants. So it is really an economic emergency in many cases, that if we don't allow and create these thoroughfares and maintain them, then we are taking business away from our downtown. So we're not going to feel it immediately here, but our businesses are feeling this immediately. So I think this verges on an emergency situation when it comes to looking at our downtown area and how we are supporting our businesses, because this is actual money in the pocket frankly, of many of our businesses not to have a safe dock for people to arrive at. So that's why I think it's so wonderful that our community stepped up and are really willing to work with us on doing something like this. I think we've given our staff the leeway with the money and the direction to work closely with them to do something. One, first, maybe immediately temporary if we have to, but also in the long run to work with them on something that's safe and continuous. So I just see this as something we've got to act on very quickly. Thank you.
I think the CAO just stated that they will look at a temporary solution, so we're not going to be able to fix it all in the next week, but we can get a temporary solution to make it A, safe and B, available this summer. But the question is the need for the engineering study, and that's really what we have to decide here, because this is not just only the temporary solution and the plywood and the tape, but it's the long-term solution. Because this is, as everybody says, a very much a centerpiece to the downtown area, we have to make sure that it's done right and done properly. So Deputy Mayor Shell, then Councillor Ingram.
Just one quick comment to that. There's probably a really good chance, like what Councillor Ingram has said, it's never been inspected, et cetera. But based on when it was built, it probably hasn't shifted, hasn't moved, is probably just fine. However, even after this flood, we had to have an engineer come in to look at our Main Street Bridge before we could reopen it to traffic. I just think we need to do an engineer's report. I really hope that we can do something temporary, so for the rest of this summer, but I think we are putting the township in a really precarious position if we don't do an engineering study on something that obviously maybe has never had one done, where people are getting in and out of the water, boats are docking, etc. So fully support the community helping, fully support that we do a temporary fix. I just think that as council, we need to protect the township, and I think that the engineering study is something that we can't get away from.
Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. I don't disagree with what you want to do. I totally agree with that. I do. My concern is that this dock has been patched for 3 years. And all of a sudden, because the top is gone, doesn't mean the bottom's gone. So why didn't we start this 3 years ago? If that was the issue, if it's the look of the bridge is the safety of that dock is on the top, 3 years ago, we should have been told that it needs to be inspected for starters. And we could have started this 3 years ago, or we could have started in the spring to have it ready for the summer. That we're not going to get anything done for boaters now. There's no time at all. The only thing we can maybe do is pull up the dock from the snowmobile bridge and put alongside the retaining wall, but it might have to be inspected too, because it's never been inspected. I'm not being smart. I'm serious. How far do we go, folks? I'm just saying, how far do we go? And if that has to be inspected on a yearly basis, I don't know. I've never seen it. And you probably don't know either whether bridges or docks have to be inspected on a regular basis. I don't know. Maybe they do. But I do support what you're wanting to do, Cynthia. I do. I'm a little annoyed that it's coming up now. So, thank you.
Councillor Sadie.
Appreciate the fact that you're saying, why is this coming up now? And this is because of our lack of an asset management plan that's been kept up over decades. And that's why we're set back. So I appreciate also the fact that time points that you're referring to are even previous, some of our staff. So it's something that we have to look at, and what you're referring to doesn't just refer to the stock, it refers to all of our infrastructure that we need to be responsible for. This is right now in our face, but there's a lot more things that we could be doing and should be. So I think that's for another council agenda. Thanks.
Councillor Sisson.
Bottom line is, Zach, you've never answered if the $30,000 is in the reserve fund. So if it's not there, then it's not there.
Through the chair. So part of the land sale is also coming through SRA sales, so shoreline road allowance sales, which is in the same obligatory reserve as the parkland. The numbers I provided were up to the end of 2025. What I would be asking is that I utilize both shoreline road allowance and parkland because there is enough funds to purchase the land plus move the 30,000 for the dock. So there is enough funds between shoreline road allowance sales and parkland to cover both fees.
Kelvin?
Again, the report in front of us is asking us to reallocate funds so that they can go out and hire an engineer that's going to review, provide a scope of work and drawings to move forward with the construction of a new dock. All I'm saying is I'm not ready to do that yet. I want the local people that have got some ideas here to be able to bring their, if you need an engineer to go review the existing structure or whatever you want to call it of this dock, I'm okay with that. I'm not ready to have an engineer go out and sit and have a look at the dock and then do up this fancy scope of work and tender documents and drawings and blah, blah, blah to do a new dock. I don't want that yet. I want the local people to have a chance to come back with their idea. I also want a temporary fix. And if that means you need to go down to, I don't know if I'm supposed to say his name or not, but it's an engineer that's just not very far from 121 and 35 to come up here and make you comfortable that you can just put some boards on the top of it. That's what I want done. And I want that done like now. I want that done. We should have been looking at this long before now. I do not want the float down the river for the Pride in the Highlands to be trying to get out over caution tape and barricades. So, and if you leave here today, we don't have an opportunity to give direction unless we do it today and say, we want a temporary fix on this dock. If it means you have to go get a local engineer to give you that comfort, then we need to authorize that today. We need to get, and we need a deadline on this, in my opinion. And as far as the other part, I'm not ready to go there yet. I'm not ready to hire an engineer to come up with something when we already have people that have tried to do this.
I think the CAO had committed to the temporary fix. So.
I think we need that in the resolution if you.
So, Mr. Mayor, I think if we look at the resolution and we, I would have to have it in front of me, but if what I'm hearing from council is an engineered study or review of the structure, and that's it. Yeah, so the resolution approves the allocation. And further, that council directs staff to provide a temporary solution to exit the river. I think what staff can commit to is we will have an engineer do a review of the structure, and we will then have them review with the community members the thoughts and ideas that that have already been developed. I mean, we're with you, council, that if we don't have to reproduce what has already been produced, we'll just have the engineer review that.
So as I'm reading the recommendation, then it actually isn't, it's not, it's just moving the money from 30,000 from the Riverwalk lighting to the Water Street dock engineering budget. This isn't actually saying we're going to hire company A or B and that they're going to go ahead and do the work. So what's before us today is basically just moving the money. And then we're extending what the CIO has just said. So we're not actually appointing somebody to do the job, right? Okay.
I think to be fair to the council member, though, I think in the body of the report, we did indicate what we were going to have the engineer do. And so what we're hearing clearly from council is hire an engineer to do the study that we need, the review of the structure, and then work with the community members who have developed a concept and have the engineer review that to see what's feasible. In the meantime, we also will find a temporary fix to have people enter and exit the river properly.
Councillor McKelvey?
Really, we don't even have to authorize this because we don't even know what we're doing with the costs. This, as I said, this was actually moving forward with the whole blown plan, RFP, blah, blah, blah. So we don't need to allocate more funds to this because at this point, we don't even know, based on these quotes of up to 75,000, that was to do tender.
Yeah, you are, through you, Mr. Mayor, the council member is correct. If we're scaling back the scope of what they're required to do, and I'll let Mr. Drinkwalter speak to.
What I wouldn't want to happen is it's still above the amount that's in that account, and we can't move forward without coming back to council. So I would like to see additional funds, even if they don't get spent. If council wants to expedite this, I would hate to have to come back with another report because we're over budget on the quote.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, that might also cover a temporary fix.
Okay. So, reason why this is so complicated is because there's a number of moving parts going on here. So, we have a resolution that, hopefully is, going to work.
Well, I haven't. Sorry. I had it on. Sorry, through the discussion with council, and through the chair, you're just gonna remove that allocation of the $30,000, obviously, for the engineer, but you want to keep that in, so. Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think you just heard from the treasurer that an allocation of funds to ensure that we can expedite, move forward, and particularly with a want for a temporary fix.
Okay, that's what I have. It's just the council just to put on the tempers.
Sorry, I can read. Yeah, okay. So, this was, Councillor Sadie and Councillor Johannesson. I'll just read it all and you decide whether you agree. That council received report 26-15 Water Street Dock Engineering as information. And the council approves the reallocation of $30,000 from Riverwalk relating capital budget expense to Water Street Dock Engineering budget. And further, the council directs staff to provide a temporary solution for the public to exit the river safely. Yep. Councillor Sisson?
Well, what we're asking them is just to assess the structure now. We're not asking for any drawings or nothing. We're asking to just assess the structure underwater.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. And then work with the community members on whatever concept, have the engineer review the community's concept.
Councillor McKelvey first.
So I fail to understand why we need to reallocate the 30,000 because we had money in the budget for the Water Street Dock engineering. There should be still that money in the budget for that without having to add to it because the additional cost, what you were saying had to be added to this was to go to a full-blown assess, design, prepare an RFP or an RFT. And I don't think we're at that stage yet until we know that it's going to come back with from the engineer and our local community on what might happen. And then isn't that where council gets to be involved in that decision making?
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, that is correct. I think what we were also looking at is there's a want for a temporary solution.
Oh, and that's not going to cost a lot of money, I'm sure. It should probably come out of operating, wouldn't it?
I would not think so if this is a temporary solution that will be removed once the permanent dock is in place. I'm not sure that would come out of operating. But I'll leave that to the treasurer.
Through the chair, I'm fine sticking with the original budget if that's how we want to move forward. Again, if we're restricted by funds going forward, we'll be back to council just to ask for funds to move forward with the project that we're trying to expedite. And if the funds don't get spent, they're still going to be sitting there as they are now.
Councillor Sanders.
Two things. I want to see us approve these funds, and I trust that we're not going to use them unless we need them because we want to move on this quickly. And we can get a follow-up report if they were used or not and how they were used. But I think we don't want to hold it up in any way. And I'd also like to see in the motion that we will be working closely with the community and getting this done. So I'd like to see that as part of the resolution. So staff are clear that we're working with our resources, the community resources. There's different kinds of liabilities that come up. So there's lots of leeway to come up with the best problem solving of what we all have to offer. And I don't want to tie our hands in any way in trying to do this quickly. Thank you.
Councillor Hennessy.
If we're spending money on a temporary fix, could we not keep the temporary fix in the water at a different spot?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it depends on what the temporary fix is. The temporary fix may be having the engineer review the structure to see what we could do with the structure itself as well. So. I can't speak to what the temporary fix is right here, right now, but
We're just coming up with that resolution. Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, through you. What was the original budgeted price for the dock itself, Zach? Do you know? For the dock rehab itself?
I believe the cost in there was for engineering, if I remember correctly.
Do you know what the number is? though?
It was $30,000.
Okay, so we're thinking we need, the other 30 is to make up that difference.
Correct, yeah.
Once the numbers came in.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, I just want to make that clear to myself.
Councillor McKelvey.
I was just going to suggest that we consider taking a break and that we let the clerk and the CAO and the treasurer, after having heard everything we're saying, draft a resolution that incorporates all of those things and they're not rushed.
Okay, well, let's try. We actually have something, so let's try that first. Councillor Sandy, Councillor Hennessy, you would have to approve the amendment. The council received report 2615 Water Street Dock Engineering as information, and that council directs staff to provide a temporary solution for the public to exit the river safely, and that council directs staff to work with the community and engineer to remedy the dock. Mr. Sandy?
Small point, I hope. To work with the community for a temporary dock, which means that it could be under our insurance and coverage or a community's coverage. Is that something that would be considered? I'd ask the CAO to comment on that before I.
I would personally just leave the resolution as it is. I think we're getting pretty granular. I mean, we're gonna look for the best solution temporarily and the best solution long-term.
Okay, so you're good with the friendly amendment? Okay, so. Councilor McKelvey?
Trying not to get everybody aggravated here, but we are not dealing with the extra money, which is fine by me, but I think you wanted the extra money so that you can continue to work with the community. And I'm fine with the extra money if we're going to include the community and these people that have already done this extra work. But right now, I believe the way you've done this, it's been taken out. So their allocation is only what's in the budget, which is $30,000. I'm personally comfortable to go higher than that if we're working with the community and what's being proposed. I'm not willing to go higher than that if it's to hire an engineer and go out and do all this other work and design and tender and blah, blah, blah.
Sure. Once more with feeling. The council received report 26-15, Water Street Dock Engineering Information, and that council approves the reallocation of $30,000 from Riverwalk lighting capital budget expense to Water Street Dock Engineering budget, and that council directs staff to provide a temporary solution for the public to exit the river safely, and that council directs staff to work with the community and engineer to remedy the dock. All right, so thank you. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, is that the end of you? Director Drinkwater? Okay, we'll take a break till 10:25. Mine. All right, we're back. We move on to building and bylaw services. Mr. Lewis, you're going to start, and I think Madam CAO, you wanted to make a few comments.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll just sort of do an introduction. This is a for information report to council. I mean, throughout this term of council, I think there's been lots of discussion about the former fire hall property. So Mr. Lewis and Mr. Shell and an engineer has taken a look at the structure. I think there were a couple of suggestions about the structure. So you'll see there was a review of an open air option. I'll let Mr. Lewis speak to that. There's an option to just leave it status quo and, you know, also just demolish the building. I think, as council knows, there's a want to do a review of the larger core area, of which the former fire hall site is part of. And, you know, we need to do a big plan for that block out there. So that's where we sit right now, is with a decommissioned fire hall, former fire hall. And Mr. Lewis, if you want to just walk through particularly the suggestion about an open air structure.
Sure. Through the chair. Basically what I did was, you know, we were kind of throwing around the idea of making the building an open air structure. So all that would be left is your roof and your uprights. So it could be used for different purposes. I was concerned when I first heard that. Of course, in regards to how the building was originally designed. So we pulled the blueprints, took a look at them. Still had the concern that there was a problem with uplift protection or frost protection for the building. Okay. Having, you know, got to the point where I was concerned enough, staff sought the advice of Tatum Engineering regarding an option to remove the interior walls and the exterior cladding to create an open air structure. The view of the drawings and the physical structure, the open air structure is not feasible. The structure was not originally designed to resist the uplift forces. So, and without the walls, the building would be continuously exposed to wind uplift loads, requiring significant structural reinforcement, which involved putting new footings in. What you have there now is you have a slab on grade. So it's just concrete poured, you know, basically as it says on grade. There's no footing underneath there that you'd see in a traditional building. So when you have an open air structure, the wind comes in, lifts up. The building is protected from sway on the columns that are in there. And that was done by the engineer putting in a rebar embedded in the concrete slab. That has nothing to do with uplift protection. Okay. In addition, the structural integrity concerns, the removal of exterior walls would result in the building no longer being heated or being protected from the outdoor elements such as the cold and the frost, and leaving the existing slab on grade foundation susceptible to frost heat and accelerated deterioration. And you know, the thickness of that slab, I would suggest that would happen fairly quickly, and the engineer was in agreement with that. So yeah, so basically, you know, as far as pursuing that aspect, it wouldn't be viable. Okay. It'd be cost prohibitive to look at doing it.
Yeah, and I think, Mr. Mayor, there was other suggestions like demolishing the building. I think we just would want to review further. We've made an investment in public washrooms in that building, and we also have a water filling station that would need to be reviewed if that structure was to come down. So as I say, this is a for information report. We were asked to bring back some information on the former fire hall, and that's what's before you today.
That's right.
You, Mayor Carter. Could we put it out to tender to have someone disassemble that building and sell it?
I understand, because of course, when you start looking at these things, you get talking to people, right? I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Back on the history of what's gone on. I know, previously when the building was being looked at, there was a number of people who wanted to come in, buy the building and.
Yeah.
So you
That's
know,
a possibility though.
it's-
And that building could be re-erected as is, like with the roof and the sides and
Somewhere.
everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that being said, then you get to the washrooms and the tap. I'm getting ahead of myself, so I'll speak to it very briefly. And then we'll talk about it later. We're doing renovations right here. Maybe it's time to pop on some washrooms at the back or something. I don't know. Maybe and now that's a whole open space. It has to go anyway, right? You know that. So take it down, sell it, get rid of the pad, move your washrooms over here and your tap. Bob's your uncle.
Sure which of the Bobs he was talking about there, but.
My brother-in-law, I know a person right now, he's a farmer that would take that down and buy that off with no problem at all. And being a farmer, he would have no problem putting it back up, right? So, and the other thing I wanted to mention was the Rotary Club in Halliburton just put a beautiful washroom in Highland Park. If anybody's interested in looking at that, it was prefab, folded in, off the frame, set up, so that's an option here too. I don't think there's a lot of money. But I mean, it's just water top. Maybe someone could check into that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we're happy to review options that council wants to look into. I am familiar with the washrooms that you may be describing. There are self-cleaning washrooms. They are not inexpensive, let's just put it that way, but certainly willing to look at options.
Councilman Kelby.
I'm gonna get told this isn't on the agenda, but everybody keeps using washrooms as a plural. And right now, and for several months, it's been washroom over there. Door has not been replaced, it's been closed. I have trying to get this dealt with and we'll just, as
being
far as the report, fine, the information. It's just taken until August from a discussion that was held in last December to put this in the budget. But can we please do something with the door so that we have 2 public washrooms?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the door is being replaced on Tuesday.
Councilor Samey.
I need some clarification. These might be obvious to others, but not to me. So we have a building that's there. We can't use it. We can't even just leave the garage doors open for people to come through and, be a place to be when you're pushing your baby carts and it starts to rain. We can't use it that way. We can't open it. Yet somebody can take it down and use it somewhere else. So why can they use it and we can't?
If you take that building down,
Yes.
I would assume that that person is going to mitigate the mold that's suggested to have been in there. Okay,
So it's the mold that is the
now
issue.
that's why the building's not being used.
And there are techniques now, if I may, through the mayor. There are techniques of using dry ice, for example, to clean out and get rid of mold in buildings that has been very effective and that people use them in their homes everywhere. And it's been proven to be very effective. Is that not an option for us to then be able to be mold-free and continue to use that building where, for example, the markets can have a place to store, or our local artists can be in rain or snow or something to that effect, and also then to make it more aesthetic on the outside? Is that not an option at all?
Just so I don't forget, I'll just suggest one point you made about having the doors open. Building was designed for use as a fire hall, and storage. Doors are open and closed, okay? you have those doors open all the time, you're back into the same thing. I'd be worried about the uplift protection on the building. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, as for mold remediation, I think, I've been involved with it in a number of buildings. Number of times have been torn down because the fact that the cost, related to the building is prohibitive. So you'd have to look at, before you could say whether dry ice, would be an option, you'd have to look at what it's going to cost to do it.
And I know a lot of homeowners do that and they don't have as deep pockets either, so. I'm just looking at all these possibilities.
Yep.
Because it is something that could be used, and we do have our washrooms there now that need to be addressed, as has been already raised. It is a place for our water, and we also have kind of two buildings there. There's the brick building at the end too, so are we just talking about the metal structure, or what happens to that building that it's connected to?
Sorry, what happens to?
The ambulance hall. The old, yeah, so there's a brick building.
I anticipate the whole thing would probably come down.
Okay. So obviously more study and options to look at here. All right, so this was the council moved by Councilor McKelvey, seconded by Deputy Mayor Shell. Council receives report 26-02 building and bylaw, former fire hall as information. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, sir. Ms. Doherty. Okay, planning and development. Whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good morning. Yep, good morning, council. So through Mr. Mayor, I'm not going to go this first report 26-33. This is proposed amendments for the official plan and zoning bylaw. I won't go into detail about every item because we'd be here until the afternoon. But I'm happy to answer any questions for council. I did just want to provide that essentially this red line is just providing a proposed amendments, an overview of those amendments, both to the official plan and zoning bylaw. These are changes that we are recommending to reduce applications for items that we think are appropriate, certainly to reduce confusion, provide some additional flexibility that we think is reasonable, and then also to introduce some provisions where the bylaw is currently vague and we've encountered some issues with misuse of structures or enforcement. I did want to also mention that the red line is a little bit chaotic because of the formatting that's in there. So I did notice that as I was going through making those red lines, that there is some formatting and some numbering issues. So I'm going to correct those before the public meeting, create a new red line that will hopefully be a little bit more streamlined and easier to consume. And also that this is just a first draft. There will certainly be some revisions to the wording between now and the public meeting that I would be making, but also in consideration of any comments from council today.
Just before we get into the questions, just for clarification, in some cases, you're saying to be consistent with the county official plan. Is that the newest version of the county plan, or was that a previous one?
Through Mr. Mayor, good point. The county is considering an official plan amendment right now for certain items. So I did take that into consideration with some of this policy consideration. Some of it is stuff that should have been in there already, and the county does have those policies there, but they're maybe making some tweaks to that. I have forwarded this to the county as well. I'm just waiting for comments about whether or not that will align with what they're proposing. So that would be addressed prior to the public meeting.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councilor McKelvey?
I think it's in, I'm trying to look, it's the official plan first. We'll go through
Okay,
it, I guess.
yep.
So 3.3.10.7 and 0.8. There, it's dealing with to ensuring that there's no new development within 500 meters of a waste disposal site. And I could see the wisdom of ensuring that there's no perhaps new development like severances and that sort of thing. But the way I'm reading this, you're going to put, and I shouldn't say the township council's being asked to put these properties that are perhaps vacant into a holding zone. And in order for that person to remove the holding, it's got to demonstrate that the water supply of the proposed development will not be negative impact. Excuse me, I kind of look at that like we're sterilizing people's vacant land. And again, I had somebody mention that we're expropriating without compensation, it seems. So is this a provincial policy thing that we must do this?
So it is the expectation at the provincial level that any new development, even if it's an existing lot, would demonstrate that the development will have safe servicing, essentially. That's the intent of that. And it is reflected in the county's official plan that no new buildings or structures should occur without, in the absence, if it's a sensitive land use. If it's something like industrial or commercial, that would be different. But for a sensitive land use, that they need to demonstrate that they have safe provision of particular water and that the soil also would be safe. And this is a means to do so by putting a hold specifically to the vacant lands. It's utilized in other municipalities as well, and I've experienced that as a valid way to do so. It doesn't prevent them from developing per se, it just makes sure that there's an appropriate study completed that either they can proceed as normal if it's a dwelling, for example, or perhaps they might have to have mitigations in place that would then be
I'm a little concerned that we're putting people. I mean, nobody's going to build at the bottom of the dump hill without making sure they're well safe. And basically, we're going to put them into a holding. We're going to take their vacant land and put them into a holding zone. And then they have to prove that they're well safe. And then they have to pay to get the holding removed. I'm struggling with this one. To say.
So, through Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, if these situations arise because there is provincial legislation surrounding it and because it is considered a public or individual health and safety matter, we do have people still confirm that information, including this policy within our official plan, make sure that our official plan aligns with that provincial legislation that we're already sort of implementing anyways, and gives us the means to more easily communicate this with property owners who then know this, and we can put it in their zoning bylaw, so it's not a shock to them when they go to build. And I think there's a reasonable way to deal with the holds. It has been suggested to be delegated authority, and we can make exemptions where the fees could be alleviated for those particular cases as well.
Councilor Kelly.
So I have other, do you want me to just keep going?
What about the next one?
Okay, well, I think I went backwards here, so I've made a note, page 5. Structure, but I guess that's probably in the zoning bylaw, but if you look at Amanda's report, the definition for structure is being proposed to be changed. But it includes outdoor hot tubs, telecommunication antennas, and towers, freestanding solar panels, and wind turbines. It just seems to be a little bit excessive to me. Because once you deem that a structure, then they have to get building permits, they have to, am I correct on this?
So through Mr. Mayor, so something being identified as a structure does not necessarily require it to be subject to a building permit. That is still regulated by the building code. So there are lots of structures that don't require building permits. They do still have to comply with the zoning bylaw, but they don't need a permit specifically. They're able to go ahead and construct or install. This is also not intended to add anything that's not already considered a structure under our bylaw. The bylaw actually even considers a car to be a structure. This is just adding for clarification that these structures that are not otherwise very explicitly in the bylaw do count as structures. And in not including them as structures, we're running the risk of them intruding into setbacks that we would want them to otherwise maintain.
So this would include when, like, for example, Rogers builds, rents a piece of property and they want to build a tower.
Correct. So through you, Mr. Mayor, if we include a telecommunications tower as a structure, it has to meet setback requirements of the zone. If we don't consider it a structure, then it can be placed anywhere on a property.
Councillor Kelp.
Page 17, Amanda's report, talks about lot creation, which then I believe will, you know. So it's not Amanda's report, it's actually in the official plan, sorry. Okay, so lot creation must be on a publicly year-round maintained road, and I thought we allowed it on other before, so I'm thinking this is a change.
Sorry, can you?
Sure, I'm in section 3.3.3.3. Okay,
3.3.3.3, that one?
yeah, so you've taken it out and
Yes.
then we've added in that lot creation should incorporate following. Any new lot shall have frontage on a publicly owned, public year-round maintained road.
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, so that's already in that portion there, the lot creation should incorporate the following design considerations. That's already part of the official plan. There's no changes proposed to that component. The only changes to, I think it's a little bit, what's happened here is in the red line, it's removed the 3.3.3.4. It should still be there. It would just be renumbered.
Okay.
Sorry. Yeah, I will make sure that those kinds of things are cleaned up for the red line for the public meeting. But yes, that is already part of the official plan. There's no changes to that. I'm just proposing to take out that one that is crossed out, 3.3.3.3. It'd be nice to have fewer numbers in our policies, but anyways, and proposing that that's just left within where it already is in 6.2 of the official plan.
I'm trying to find. Well, there was a section about severances in existing lots and it's this whole aggregate. So I believe it's 3.6.1. But no, that's just, so with that, maybe you can remind me, is that in the official plan or the zoning?
Yes, that would be through Mr. Mayor in the official plan, just under, I think what you're talking about is just under, it says 3.6.4 development policies for adjacent lands.
Thank you, that's it. So this is saying incompatible sets of land uses and activities adjacent to extractive operations shall not be permitted. Now, when the Halliburton County became designated under the Hits and Quarries Act, I believe it was, there was a desire by the politicians at the time to ensure that every possible little pit or quarry was grandfathered. So they had to submit a thing to say to the townships at the time, we've been taking material out of there, that's an active pit, and they got grandfathered in a license. And now I see this is coming back to bite us because we have these licensed pits that have not been used for like 50, 60 years. And now we're going to shut down development because of that. And I'm struggling with this. And the big struggle for me is, as an example, just to give everybody an example of what I'm talking about, is the Hicks severances that were on a road off of Lachlan Road, and then I can't remember the other road. Do you remember the Hicks severances? They came to us. We talked about allowing them 4+ retained, and then it was noticed that county only allows 3+ retained. And anyways, we approved them. County Land Division approved them. And I'm reading the way this reads that they won't be able to build on them. I need to make sure that isn't what we're doing.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, so this change in the policy is reflective of what's already existing at the county level. Our official plan currently is not in conformity with the county level official plan, which creates an issue when we're reviewing consent applications. Absolutely, it creates a conflict between them and puts the county in an awkward position. So this is really intended to make sure that we are conforming with that. Yes, it would essentially in the strictest sense of this policy mean that new residential development adjacent to active extraction operations would not be permitted. It does not mean that in an appropriate circumstance, somebody couldn't get an official plan amendment. And we do, as part of the consent process, look into the extractive operations. There are a lot that are noted in the official plan documents that are no longer even licensed, for example. So that is part of the consideration that goes into that.
Is that consideration at the local or at the county level?
Both.
Let's go.
Well, I just need to have a really clear black and white answer to this. Are the Hicks severances that we approved here and the county approved not going to be allowed to have a building?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't believe this would have an impact because those are provisionally approved already. So it wouldn't be generally they would be approved under the basis of what was in place at the time. That's the concern.
My concern is that we need lots so that people can build houses. And I don't want people to be shut down from trying to create lots because they're within 500 meters or 300 meters of a pit that's never been used for 50 or 60 or 70 years. And to me, it's the pit owner's responsibility to ensure that that their activities are not incompatible to the existing land uses that are there. I still read this, that in that particular example, they wouldn't be able to build because they may have provisional, but they don't have final because they have to come back to us and use the land.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, lots that are created, if they are vacant, they would be permitted to build. This is more in relation to the creation of new lots. So future creation of new lots would not be permitted in these types of circumstances. But again, I would just reiterate, this is to bring us into conformity with the county official plan. This is also reflected in the provincial planning statement. Yes, I agree that pit operations are to ensure that they are compatible with surrounding sensitive land uses. However, it does work the other way where aggregate resources are to be protected while there's an aggregate resource in place, and protecting those resources is ensuring that there's not an increased level of development within close proximity to them.
Or you mentioned about active extraction. So what of these, older pits that were identified may not have been used for decades, but I guess as long as they still have some potential for use, then the province puts restrictions on the surrounding land. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor.
Questions?
Okay, so in the zoning bylaw, 3.99 front lot line or lot line front. And I get mixed up on this whole water frontage, and so it talks about shoreline allowance on the front yard. And provided the building or structure is not located within the shoreline road allowance. So what happens if it is located within the shoreline road allowance? So that's where I'm trying to figure out.
Through Mr. Mayor, if it is located in the shoreline allowance, they're not eligible for building or redevelopment. This is also an existing provision that's already in our zoning bylaw. Right now, it's located in section 4.8.4 for non-complying only. But we've encountered situations where the lot is in fact compliant with required setbacks, but this provision would also be relevant to them as well, where they don't own the shoreline allowance. And so this also gives that flexibility to not just people with non-complying structures, but also people who do comply with setbacks. So it's already in the bylaw, we're just moving from where it is.
Um, Three point one seven three. Their structure includes a hot, oh, I already talked to you about that, never mind. 4.1.5 setback requirements. One of the sections is no accessory building or structure allowed. And just, again, I'm a little confused.
Sorry, could you repeat the section?
4.1.5 setback requirements. Number F. Accessory building or structure which is not part of the principal building shall not be erected. I guess that means it within the setback, but
Through Mr. Mayor, so this is an existing provision, it's just been sort of separated by the red line, so it would be, it's not erected closer to the street line than the principal building on the lot, except in the case of a through lot in the shoreline residential zone. So that is an existing provision in the zoning bylaw. We've suggested leaving that, although I appreciate the red line is a little bit confusing there. We've suggested leaving that and provided a new provision under garages that would provide an exception to that.
4.1.9. And it's the dreaded shipping containers. I did a little bit of research, but in all honesty, I did a lot because I didn't have the time, but I see where we're going to start to allow these in the non-residential zone. So, and I've mentioned this before, Algonquin Highlands took a stand and amended their zoning bylaw to allow shipping containers into, same type of non-residential type zones that you're proposing. But they also allowed them in rural zones. But they do have some good screening and that sort of thing that's involved. And they also made them go through site plan. And also they have to get a building permit. So in order to get a building permit, then they're assessed. So we right now have shipping containers all over the place, and we're not getting any assessment for those because they've never been permitted. So to me, I would like us to look, again, I mentioned this before, I kind of like the way Algonquin Highlands has included it in some rural areas. Clearly, I don't want shipping containers in downtown and the smaller lots and that sort of thing, but I want something put into it so that people, right now, they're not allowed. So they don't get grandfathered, I don't believe, because they were not legal to start with. But I want to ensure that they are controlled and they have to get a building permit and then MPAC picks it up. Because right now, these are unassessed garages, really, and you start adding them all up, they add up to assessment that we need.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So, a couple of points to that. So in our zoning bylaw, the rural zone is considered a non-residential zone. It's listed there, so it would apply to rural zoned properties. It wouldn't apply as per this, proposed regulation to like rural residential, for example. I'm not suggesting that at this point in time, we introduce shipping containers as being permitted, under this particular targeted amendment. I think if council wants to consider shipping containers in residential zones, I certainly can appreciate and understand why. I think that just needs to be a separate, more detailed, independent review, because that's a little bit more complicated and for some people can be a bit more of a sensitive topic. So I think in industrial and commercial zones, this would be something that we can easily introduce, where I think I would suggest holding off on introducing it into the residential zones, but it would be permitted on a rural zone property where, you know, residential uses are permitted.
Sorry, saying permitted or?
Allowed, yes, they're allowed. I haven't specified that they would go through site plan control. That would require an update to the site plan control bylaw as well. But where we're introducing it to primarily industrial and commercial lands, they would be subject to site plan control anyway. So it would sort of automatically get tied into that process for those kinds of lots. We wouldn't pick it up necessarily in rural zoned areas, but given that those lots are supposed to be quite large, I wouldn't anticipate there to be an issue in the interim. For building permits, I have seen zoning bylaws incorporate or mention a requirement for a building permit. However, I don't think that's up to the zoning bylaw to determine it. It's already ingrained in the Ontario Building Code that a building permit would be issued for a structure like that. So once they are permitted structure, we could then just automatically, that would be something that would be permitted as a building permit, would be allowed as a building permit. So, and again, that doesn't move us into getting building permits for the residential lots in the short term, but something that we would be able to look at for the long term. But I don't think it needs to be in the zoning bylaw because it's already in the building code.
Question. Going back to this. The idea of the a new lot being on a publicly maintained road. What about on private roads? We now have, you know, large, in some cases, large properties that are, you know, that could easily be split on private roads, and also on some other, you know, we have others that are on road allowances that actually have kind of private roads on them. So what's the logic here? Just
So just to clarify, right now, if the property is in the waterfront designation, lot creation on a private road is permitted. It's not recognized outside of the waterfront area, primarily because those might run into backlot situations in some cases, as well as the idea being that new lots should be properly serviced. You know, like road servicing, for example. We don't allow where there's just a road allowance that is like a private easement, for example. That is not permitted. And again, that is attributed to making sure that new lots are created, have proper servicing, appropriate access for emergency services, so that we're not creating lots just for the sake of new lots, essentially.
Okay.
But that's already in the official plan. Nothing is being proposed to change in terms of the road frontage required for a new lot.
Okay, I think I've recently come across a couple of examples of a situation where that could be a problem.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, we have encountered some consent applications where they don't meet the requirements of frontage under the current official plan. I think that is more of a intensive review of the policy and what's appropriate, because then we start, often in those cases, we start also getting into lake impact and sensitivity, especially if they're on at capacity lakes where we might be increasing, not on at capacity lakes, because you can't do that, but on, lakes that are not identified in that way, we may be quickening the pace to which they reach their development capacity, but for suboptimal lots. So I think that is certainly worth looking at, but in a more comprehensive review, rather than what this was intended to do as like a more targeted look at things that we could do to sort of help process and reduce applications.
I think as long as we're in a situation where we, we're willing to acquiesce, and as long as things are within the spirit of because there could be some technicalities that prevent something that we normally would be trying to prevent, circumstances. You, Councilman Carter.
But what you just said there about it's in the spirit of what we want, like I think it's plain that we wouldn't allow something like, which I think is something we do need to look at as far as private roads and I realize it's already in there, and I guess this isn't a review, but it seems like it's a review to me, but maybe we need to look at ways to try and help develop.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, for the purposes of this exercise, we've looked at inquiries and applications that we've received in the last year and a half to identify. I'm not saying that there aren't other situations, certainly there are, or opportunities that might be appropriate that could open up, other kinds of inquiries that we haven't been receiving. But the way that we proceeded with this exercise was to look at what we have received and how we could alleviate what we have been getting from property owners.
Okay, so 4.2. I believe it's dealing with the additional dwelling units.
Yes, 4.2.
And I know I brought this up and maybe everybody's tired of hearing me, but I want to try to make it easier for people. And additional dwelling units are prevented in front yard. And I don't see why that is. Sorry, you're being a blockhead. There's lots of property out there where somebody could put an additional dwelling unit in their front yard. And I don't see why we would say that they can't. And I know they can go to the committee of adjustments, or they can do a rezoning.
Through Mr. Mayor, so a lot of the provisions that are in place for accessory dwelling units are intended to ensure that it's still recognized as an accessory use, and our zoning bylaw generally doesn't allow accessory structures in the front yard. I do think that there could be a reasonable flexibility provided, not unlike the one that we're suggesting to introduce for garages where the front yard is being met. So I can certainly add that in as I make a note about that. But yes, that is essentially why that provision was there in the first place, was just to reflect the other provisions that we already had in the bylaw at the time for accessory structures. But I do think that there's reasonable grounds to add that in, similar to what we're proposing for garages.
I think particularly a couple of things. One, sometimes from fairly large properties, and the fact that it's in front or behind, is almost irrelevant. And then the other thing is that when you get close to the lakes, the front of the property turns around. So, theoretically, I'm quite fortunate that you drive in from 21, and that's really the back of my property. And so my garage can actually be where the car would be as opposed to halfway down the cliff.
Right.
So I think that's important. I really, I know the accessory use, but I think that putting in black and white that it has to be in the front and the back is not the way to go. That's
So, perfect example, your property, large acreage, you could have an additional dwelling unit in your rear yard because that's the county road frontage.
Yeah.
As someone who has 72
opposite.
acres, my frontage is Highway 35 and I'm built back 650 feet. You can't even see me in the summertime, but I can't put an additional dwelling unit on. So this has been a bugaboo of mine. I'm not intending to build one, so don't let anybody try to put me into the conflict of interest here. I'm just saying as an example.
Yep.
That it makes no sense to me that an additional dwelling unit must be in the rear. I don't understand. We just need to try and allow these things and get them built. People in them.
Yep.
So are we agreeing that we're changing that before we go out?
Through Mr. Mayor, I have no issue with that. I would keep it similar to garages. It still has to meet the front yard setback, which would be just intended to ensure, things like traffic safety, et cetera. But I don't see any reason why we couldn't extend the same flexibility to additional dwelling units to allow them in the front yard, like subject to the setback, but in front of the house essentially.
Well, the other thing that's in there with this additional dwelling units is you have to have them within, now we're changing this, it was 30 meters, and now we're going to go to 100 meters from the primary dwelling. Again, why? Like, why do we have that concern? Again, I'm going to go back to the example where if Bob wants to build an accessory dwelling unit, in his case, he's fine as far as it being in his rear yard. But why does it have to be within 300 feet, basically, of his house? Like,
I think what we're trying to discourage is essentially the creation of two entirely separate residential uses on a lot. Because it's supposed to be still accessory. It's not, I mean, if council wants to change, fine. The intent of the provision, however, is to ensure that we're still respecting the fact that we've got, rural character to appreciate. Not all lots have that degree of room that we're talking about. We're talking about huge, huge lots in that case, and I understand that provides more opportunity, but we don't want to, we want to protect the rural character. We want to ensure that this still represents an accessory use. It's not intended to be two full dwelling units on the property. This is accessory dwelling units. So there needs to be consideration for how they remain to be accessory to the primary use. And this is one of the ways to accomplish that.
So is the provincial legislation that really came into effect to try to generate more building and housing, did it really specify as accessory uses, or how was it?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, they are considered accessory uses by the province. However, also like the province hasn't looked at it in the way that we have per se. They've only mandated that it be in urban, if you want to call them urban, so service areas. They've extended the power to councils to consider them in places that are not service, but with appropriate provisions for ensuring that we're maintaining appropriate development. So they didn't look at you know, whether or not distances had to come into consideration, because realistically speaking, when the province put forward those regulations, they were looking at what are most likely smaller lots anyways, that these wouldn't have come into practice. They wouldn't have had to consider, per se, like the rural character.
So to me, maybe it's just too simple. Yeah, I don't know. Take out the requirements. Allow people to put an additional dwelling unit on their property that they want to have 400 feet away. Like, why do we limit everything if that's not mandated by the province, but it isn't? So, I mean, the province didn't get into the specifics on, it has to be in the front yard or a backyard or side yard, or it has to be this far away. These are our rules, and I think we need to lighten up on them.
What? I don't disagree. I mean, I think we have to, we should consider it. I mean, I think, again, this was, you know, my property is an example. I'm not planning on doing this, but, you know, my backyard is, you know, County Road 21. And so I think if we built the property, County Road 21, so it would have access to, you know, the road and all that, it would be over 400 meters from my house. You know,
Perfect.
which wouldn't be allowed.
No, it's just,
And if you built it within 100 meters of my house, you'd be in the middle of the forest with, you know, with where you couldn't build because it would be on a private road as opposed to being on 21. So, I mean, I just think that, you know, catch-22 all over the place. I think, you know, I don't know that we decide that at this moment, but I think it really needs to be considered.
Through Mr. Mayor, I have increased it to 100 meters in consideration that there are a lot of, in particular in the township, topographical challenges, for example. But again, this is not intended to allow essentially two, like, because otherwise we should just be, which is, I would not recommend, just allowing 2 full dwelling units on a property. That's not what the intent of doing, you know, allowing additional dwelling units was intended to accomplish. It was intended to, yes, provide reasonable intensification of housing options. The province only considered that appropriate within the urban area, but did, like I said, allow, you know, communities to consider otherwise. But I'd be hesitant to get into situations where we are essentially creating what functions as 2 separate lots, but on 1 single parcel. So it's still my recommendation to keep that in, but certainly up to council.
so we are being asked to consider, but we're gonna go to the public and we think it's okay for, I'm sure, as they read those notices. But this is to change it from 30 meters to 100 meters, and I'm saying, why do we have to even have that? And I realize you're saying we're creating like 2 homes on 1 lot. Well, the province allowed us to do additional dwelling units to try and get housing opportunities. We have very few housing opportunities around here because of lots of different limitations. This is an opportunity for us to try and make this easier. I, for one, want that. Let me just do it that way.
Yeah, I think the other way to look at it is what the planner is saying is that, you know, if you really wanted to handle it, you could do a severance. And, you know, have the building, a building that's going to be at the far end of your property could be, you could just sever it from your property to create the building lot.
Well, yeah, that's still an option, but we're dealing with additional dwelling units on
No,
this
no, I
subject matter
understand.
right now. You can't put in an additional dwelling and then use that as an excuse for severance either. That's later on. I just think we need to open up the opportunities for additional dwelling units. We want to see that we consider that. I mean, it doesn't, it's going forward, changing from 30 to 100. I want it taken in period.
Thank you, through the mayor. I think part of the issue that we're dealing with here is that Queens Park often focuses on rural areas when they make these kinds of things up. And I think, and I might be wrong, that part of why there is additional dwelling units is because farmers wanted to have their kids continue on a farm. And so that they didn't want to live with their parents. So they created a situation where the youth, the young farmers coming in could have their own house on that farm and not have to live in their parents' home. And so additional dwelling units was brought in for some really interesting reasons. But now what we're trying to do is how do we make some of this provincial legislation and the reasons behind it fit our rural areas? And it's complicated. And so what we really would think that we would do normally would be sever the property. So we wouldn't have an issue around additional dwelling units, because if people want an additional house, they could sever the property and create an additional house. But now we have this legislation that we're trying to interpret for something it wasn't necessarily meant to be. And we're getting really into the weeds on how do we promote, encourage more housing? And is it better to sever? And homeowners and property owners need to figure this out too when they looking at buying or developing. Is it better to sever and then create that new home? Or is it better to have an additional dwelling unit, which I would say is a rare situation that you'd want to have an additional dwelling unit on the same property, unless there is some kind of other sort of taking over the farm or reason like that. So that's some of the logic I think that we're missing, and we're trying to get into the weeds on some of this. That is, we're trying to put a round peg in a square hole, I think, when looking at additional dwelling units versus severing property. So it's complicated when we try to incorporate that into our bylaws. That's a perspective that I think we need to realize as we're trying to work this out, and to make sure that people who have property that want to do additional units aren't having to pay more because they have to go through different permits or whatever, but they can do it properly. So just some thought behind it. Thank you.
That, even if it is a family member is going to live in it, you may not want them within 30 minutes. So, saying, go ahead.
Additional dwelling units was a new legislation that came from the province to try and encourage more housing opportunities. So it really wasn't tied to farms, but this was they were trying to encourage these in the cities and the urban areas where they built an additional dwelling unit right next door in a laneway, basically. But we have the opportunity to expand upon where we're going to allow additional dwelling units in little rural Ontario. And all I'm saying is we're too restrictive, and that's why we're not getting it. I just want that changed.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we don't have a lot of uptake in additional dwelling units, but I'll be honest, I'm not sure that it has a lot to do with our provisions. In my experience in other communities, there is not generally a lot of uptake with additional dwelling units. And that's also partially because as much as it's a great idea to allow them, they are still expensive to implement, especially if you need to add additional servicing. So I think there are other complications with additional dwelling units. As I said, I think that in removing some of the restrictions, I think there are some that we can look at to open up flexibility, but the ones such as the distance from the dwelling are intended to ensure that we're keeping it as an accessory use, that we're respecting the rural character. I think, we're talking in some instances about what if we, want the additional dwelling unit closer to the house. I have seen other instances where people want to put those additional dwelling units way back from the road. And that creates a lot more site alteration, significant tree removal. We're looking at an environmental sensitivity, and also questioning whether or not that additional dwelling unit is appropriate for its intended use, which is to provide a housing option for someone. So I think there are other reasons to limit how far it is from the dwelling. I've tried to work in some flexibility considering some of the, unique constraints in the area in terms of topography, but that's my
So you've
Sort of
moved it
position.
from 30 meters to 100. So
correct, yes.
I think it's a start. I mean, I don't. I'm of two minds of it, so, but I think that's a start. Councilor Smith.
Just to add, yes, additional units were to create more housing in urban areas, but once again, that's with the urban focus. So I think in rural areas that we have that option of severances as opposed to some of the reasons that we had for farming, et cetera. But I would be amiable to not having to identify how many meters it just gets really complicated there, but I think it means really having to educate the people who are coming in to take advantage of these things on what limitations they might have in the future if they take up one of these options. And I think that's where, because then otherwise, if they do one thing and then they don't realize that a couple of years from now, if they change their mind on something, there are all these other things that they got stuck with. And I think that's part of our issue here. Thanks.
Are there any other questions? Councilor McKelvey?
I'll fall off that hill on that one. I'm going to another one, if that's okay.
Yeah.
4.8.3 is dealing with restoration to a safe condition. So it talks about being able to restore a structure to a safe condition, but only if you own the shoreline road laws. And we need to get people that have buildings on our shoreline laws to buy the shoreline road. So I understand that. But what happens when they want to buy the shoreline lots and then you have to wait for a while to get the survey and then you have to wait for this and you have to wait for that. Meanwhile, their old boathouse is falling in the lake. So what can we do to try to ensure that we are not stopping people from restoring something to a safe condition? And the way I read this, they can't, and that's where we've already had an issue of this, where a boathouse was falling into a lake and we couldn't let them fix it, which I still struggle with.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so this is not strictly a zoning bylaw matter in that case. That becomes an issue of ownership related to building permit. So building permits can only be issued to the property owner if the township is the property owner and not the person wanting to redevelop. However, we have figured out approaches, strategies between planning and building to accommodate those situations where somebody is committed to purchasing shorewood allowance. So yes, this is in here. But I think we've found reasonable means of moving forward with individuals while they are purchasing the shorewood allowance. Zoning bylaw always assumes that people built on their own property. We know that that's not the case.
Some people think they built on their own property. Too,
Yes.
but don't realize
But but again, some of that's not a limitation per se of the zoning bylaw. That becomes a limitation under the Ontario Building Code. But again, I think the CBO and myself have means of handling those situations.
Any questions?
My last
Yep.
My last one is 4.31. And we're going to, according to this, start to regulate signs. Water, and some things shouldn't be put in bylaws that we don't have any possible way. So this is saying signs shall not be permitted within the front yard of a property zone shoreline residential. I struggle with why we have. included this.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, because we have had instances of people putting signs in the shore road or in the shoreline on residential properties for various reasons, and I wouldn't consider them to be an appropriate structure. They're not listed as a permitted shoreline structure, so they technically are already not permitted there. This provides some additional clarity.
I don't get it. I just don't understand. I don't know if you can give some example or something that makes me understand why we want to start to regulate this. Like what happens if somebody puts out in the front of their, a sign that says Shopsy's Way? I don't know. I'm just trying to think of something. So, you know, I own a shoreline road. I don't, but if I owned a shoreline road allowance and I wanted to put this little cute little sign that says something, we're gonna start regulating those?
This is more intended like a business sign.
Well, then I think we need to specify that then. There's not very many businesses allowed in the shoreline residential zone. They would have a commercial line within them.
Through Mr. Mayor, so there would be an exception for home occupation. Well, just home occupation.
Was one, can't remember if it was his term of council or the previous, where somebody was sort of illegally operating a motor repair business, boat repair business on their property as a home business, and put up a fairly extensive sign about advertising that.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so we could change some of the wording to be more specific to something like a permanent sign, like, you know, I agree, there are little signs people put like by their docks and on their sheds and things that are cute. That's not what the intent of that would be. I'm talking more of like a permanent, it's been staked in the ground, it's got, you know, like it's a business sign essentially. And it is already technically regulated, but because it's not a permitted shoreline structure, it is already regulated through the fact that it's not listed as being allowed. It's the fact that it's not expressly in the zoning bylaw where we run into issues where people don't understand that that's how the bylaw is intended to operate. So this is more so intended to just clarify that, which is already regulated.
Good point, Councilor. Right. Is that you were going to say the same thing?
She answered my question.
Okay, fine. All right. Any other questions? Okay. So, moved by Councillor Johannesson, seconded by Councillor Saini. Council received report 26-33 planning as information. And further, the council directs the planning department to proceed with preparation of the proposed official plan and zoning by law amendments and schedule the requisite public. But just for clarification, after the public meeting goes back to us.
Through Mr. Mayor, yes, so my intent would be to bring it forward for public meeting for draft number 2. I wouldn't be making a recommendation for a decision at that point. I would bring it back to the next meeting in council.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. I believe you're staying up to talk about 2634.
Yes, I almost forgot I had another report. Mr. Mayor, report 26-34. Yes, so this is the report and bylaw to close up and subsequently convey a portion of Mackay Street to HHS. We circulated under the appropriate policy. We didn't receive any comments other than from Bell Canada requesting an easement, which can easily be granted to them. And otherwise, I have no comments.
Councilor Ingram.
Through the mayor, I just want to be clear. I'm looking at the map and it's part 1, correct?
Correct.
Isn't that Alistair Street?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So it's Mackay, as far as I know, but it's
I think it's
legally
I think it
legally
turns to
known
Alistair.
as Alistair.
Turns to Alistair at
Miss MacArthur's old place. Sorry, as you guys run around. through that.
Yes.
So when you hit that spot and you turn, that becomes Alistair. I don't want the confusion down.
No,
the
that's
road.
fair. And we were also very
Wondering about
confused.
that.
Yeah, we were very much so. It's not shown on the copy I have printed, but I think even if you go further east, there's a different name for.
I get why they call it Mackay. I do get it. It's just
Yeah.
on the sheet.
So what we've done in the bylaw is basically said it's both.
Okay.
It's Mackay and, yeah.
No, I'm
it's-
just curious. I want-
Yeah, so we just wanted to make sure that there, yes, exactly when it's conveyed, there's no, so we included every name, that it may or may not have.
Thanks.
Streets having leases.
Yeah.
All right, are there any questions about this? Right, so, moved by, Councilor McKelvey, seconded by Councilor Sisson, the council receives 26-34 planning's information. And further that bylaw 26-76 being a bylaw to stop up, close, and convey a portion of McKay Street with respect to application PLRA 2025-102 be referred to the bylaw portion of the agenda. All those in favor? Please carry. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we move to admit, we want to stay here. And down to the hot seat.
Oh, do you want me to move to the
No,
hot seat?
no.
Okay. Okay, I am very comfortable. Thank you. Thank you.
So, Madam Fletcher, please speak to your reports.
Okay, the first report before you, council, is related to the Lockland Community Center project. I'm here seeking direction from council as there's a need to go in a different direction to affect a building on that site. Current state right now is site preparation has occurred. The township has designed and will facilitate the implementation of a septic system. We're essentially ready to go. Given that the former RFP is basically stale dated, our recommendation is to develop and let a new RFP for a building. And our suggestion is to keep the method wide open to get as many options as possible. So I'm just looking for council's endorsement. The intention would be to release that early fall, and then in the December meeting of council have that awarded.
So to clarify, the RFP will take out something,
That is correct, Mr.
put in,
Yes.
specify. Okay.
We would do a full RFP. Yeah, or just leave the method open. Thanks.
Questions? Toby?
Can we go ahead and do the septic then? We have money in the budget.
Right.
That's out of the levy to do.
If that is council's direction, we could install the septic. I would not go any further than that, though. If I'm the new proponent, I would want to know where the foundation is going or the slab is going, for instance, that sort of thing. But if there, if we installed the septic this fall, we would have to ensure that it's well protected over the winter time. The other option is we're ready to go and we could do that early spring and then do the building right after.
Yeah, I wouldn't be in favor of doing the septic. I've learned through the channels recently that you don't design a septic until you have building drawings. So until you get them drawings, there's no way I'd be doing a septic.
I would concur.
I just wanted to get something moving, but I see.
Right. Any other questions? So moved by Councillor Sissons, seconded by Councillor McKelvey. Council received report 2631 administration, Lockland Community Center as information, and further the council directs staff to prepare a new RFP for the Lockland Community Center. Bill, those in favor? That is carried. Right along.
The second report in front of you, council, is related to our council chambers and the county's newly renovated council chambers. So we let the county take the lead in terms of their new council chambers and looking at AV equipment and costing things out. What we've come to realize is we would have to make some pretty hefty investment in this room to have the quality, a good quality of audio visual in particular. And so I've started discussions with county counterpart about the potential to share the newly renovated county council chambers as a council chambers. And then the intention would be to take this room, redo the flooring, paint the walls, redo the ceiling, but make it a modern meeting room. And we can do that at significantly less cost than what the audio visual would be for this room to be a council chambers. And just given the proximity, it doesn't make sense. The courts can still function in here. We move things around for them all the time. So we're just looking for council's endorsement to go in that direction. And then my counterpart and I will develop an agreement to come back to council.
Deputy Mayor Shell.
Just a quick comment that I think this is a really good idea, especially with the governance study being at the county level right now. I'd hate to see us invest in a couple $100,000 audio system like they did up there. And then, you know, who knows what might happen. It may never happen. And if that doesn't, then you could reconsider, the next council can reconsider. But I think right now, probably putting it on a pause is a really good idea.
Okay, now I can talk about this. This is after. That would be, I think it's a good time to look at washrooms. Not necessarily attached to this building, but in the general area out here, it's a wasted lot there. It just sits there empty. I know there's a power line from the generator that runs underground, but the water line cuts in the parking lot, so there's nothing under it as such that you would run into. It's a central location, maybe even a little closer to Main Street, you know? I don't know. Maybe it's time to look at it and consider. I don't know whether it's feasible. Maybe you could just have a look at that while you're doing your renovation ideas.
Yeah, and so, yeah, we can take that offline, as it's not on the agenda, I'm being reminded. But certainly we can look at washroom options for,
Offline and outhouse. Councilor McKelvey.
That was poor. I'm all for saving money, consolidating everything. I just need to know how much money are we talking about? Like, is it 20,000 or 200,000 or?
so in terms of doing this room, we could do it almost home theater style. We would envision being able to project things on a screen, but we just don't need the microphones and a lot of the speakers that you would need to have a full-blown council chambers.
What were we planning in this year's budget to spend here to fix this?
We only put 40,000 in the budget for this. We put 100,000 in for the washroom renovations. But to do this as a council chambers would be well north of $100,000 for audio visual.
Okay, that's all. I
Yeah.
just needed to know what we
Yeah.
would, I just wanted to make sure we weren't trying to save $20,000 or something here.
It's in the six figures.
I think they spent over 200 at the county for the.
Well, yes, they need to spend a little more
They're working.
because that's the other, and I realize it's new and they're working on it. I get that, but the echo in there is terrible.
Yeah, they're still fine tuned.
Since these washrooms are on this agenda, I can speak to it. So those washrooms, if we're not doing the big overhaul right away with this and considering, do we have to put $100,000 into those washrooms? Like, I don't know, like if this is just gonna be a meeting space and, you know, only used for the courts, basically, and staff for a meeting, it's just a question. It's probably not even for me, for the next council, just something to consider.
Well, particularly if we were going to do something.
That's what I mean. That was my thinking, was that the washrooms that are not on the agenda that Mr. Ingram wants to speak to could could actually be, maybe the money for those could be shifted. But again, that's another council, just a thought.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to pause. We're busy with many other things. So.
Okay, any other questions on this? Yeah, go ahead.
So, I mean, have you talked to, you've sort of talked to the county, like, are they gonna charge us for this?
Through you, I think all they're looking at recouping is some custodial costs.
Okay, and like it would be more for also, like our, committee of adjustments would have to be up there.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I mean, we'll work out all those details of what days, what times and which groups. The other thing is this would become a bookable space for both organizations as well.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with that. I just think it's more than council. I mean, then,
Yep.
committee of adjustment has to have I don't know what other ones we have.
Yep.
Okay.
That's all part of the agreement.
Right. Oh, sorry. Okay, over there.
After attending the meeting yesterday at the county, it was brought up that we work together. So I think this is a very good idea that we can share chambers. Well done.
All right. Moved by Councillor Ingram, seconded by Councillor Saney. Council Procedure Report 26-32, admin council chambers for information, and the council directs staff to develop an agreement with County of Haliburton for the use of the county council chambers. All those in favor? That is carried. Spitting.
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So we have a quick report regarding the Rotary Club's road toll. I spoke with the Rotary Club yesterday and have confirmed their request. It is for September 5th, 9 a.m. till 2 p.m. And it has been circulated to the agencies yesterday.
Councillor Ingram.
I'd like Lisa to do all the reports from Minden Hills now as they come out a day after the actual meeting. Very good. Good work
This
there.
was a special circumstance.
Yeah.
Normally. if
Thanks for doing
there's,
Councillor McCullough.
I'm fine with this, but I'd also like to add that we delegate this to staff from going forward. So I said the same thing. I'm glad your dreams are the same as mine, because I said that to Vicky. Did I dream this or did we delegate it? And she told me I dreamt it. So now I want to delegate it. I thought we did too, but anyways, it's an easy policy. Staff knows the rules, just then people don't miss out.
We'd be happy to take on that task.
Yeah, I think it's because there's a limit of 4 a year. And this is number 2 of
We
years.
can count.
Yes.
Right. So moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Sisson, that council received report 26. Okay, it's administration. Sorry, it was the same number since it threw me off. Report 2634, administration, Rotary Club of Minden road toll request as information. And that council approved the Rotary Club of Minden request to hold their road toll event on Saturday, September 5th, 2026 from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the following locations: 69 Bob Cajun Road and Water Street near Loggers Footbridge. And further, that prior to the event, the Rotary Club of Minden is to provide the township with a certificate of insurance naming the corporation of Township of Minden Hills as additional insured in the amount of $5 million. And further, that council delegates authority to the clerk, deputy clerk, for any future road toll applications. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. All right, we now will be moving into closed session. In resolution. Okay, be it resolved that the council proceeds into closed session at 11:49 a.m. for the purpose of discussing the following. One item pursuant to section 239(2)(b) of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, individuals' conduct. Two items pursuant to section 239(2)(d) of the Municipal Act as amended regarding labor relations or employees' negotiations, personnel matters ×2. And then one item pursuant to section 239(2)(e) of the Municipal Act as amended regarding litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board litigation matter. All those in favor? That is carried. Welcome back. Moved by Councillor Saini, seconded by Councillor Johannesson. Be it resolved that closed session adjourned and open session resumes at 1:46 p.m. All those in favor? As carried. Moved by Councillor Saini and seconded by Councillor Ingram. Be resolved that the direction given in closed session be approved. All those in favor? As carried. Moved by Councillor Sisson, seconded by Councillor McKelvey. Be resolved that bylaw 26-76 PLRA 2025-102 be received and read a first time, considered read a second time, third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. All those in favor? That is carried. Moved by Deputy Mayor Shell, seconded by Councillor McKelvey, that bylaw 2677, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council held during its meeting of August 13, 2026, be received and read a first time, considered read a second and third time, and finally passed with the corporate seal affixed. All those in favor? That is carried. And Moved by Counselor Johansson, seconded by Counselor Sani. Be it resolved that the August 13, 2026 regular council meeting is hereby adjourned at 1:48 PM. All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everybody, for attending. And this week end is Rotary Fest. So it's advertised far and wide and on the Rotary website, lots of fun events on Saturday and Sunday. And be sure to give money to the clowns and enjoy yourself, everybody. Bye for now.